Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. This is episode number 3 of the Question Everything Except This podcast. We're super excited about jumping into our discussion today. Chirag and I, when we were trying to figure out, hey, what should we talk about today? We were exchanging some text back and forth, and he's like, dude, we should totally talk about Johan Hari's book, Stolen Focus. Because if you go back to, what was even the impetus for this podcast, that was one of the books that Chirag and I were talking about on the train ride, where we discussed the idea and then eventually started the podcast. So we're like, that was a good segue, and it'll tee up a lot of great conversations. And look forward to it, man. Looking forward to jumping in.
Yeah, definitely. And I might have taken credit for it when I mentioned it to you, but I actually have to give credit to my brother. My brother texted me earlier today and said, your next podcast topic should be to discuss Stolen Focus. So I have to give him credit, my brother Yathric. Awesome. I'll credit to him. Yeah.
I'll have to recall one of the funniest Yathric memories, like after we record the pod, man. Your brother has like a memorable moment that's like emblazoned in my brain that I can never get out.
Oh, nice.
The one time we went camping. So anyway.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that.
So awesome. Thanks, Yathric, for the idea, man.
Yeah. So before we jump in, it's funny. I wanted to mention that I texted Sune earlier. I think it was either today or yesterday about, it's constantly kind of working in my brain about, what this podcast is even going to be. And, I came across this term technophilosophy, and I was like, I've been thinking a lot about AI, as I'm sure we all have been recently. And technophilosophy really stuck out to me. So I texted him, like, maybe our podcast should be technophilosophy. And, we kind of did a little back and forth about, and I played kind of devil's advocate against myself, saying, maybe we shouldn't limit ourselves. And after our exchange, I was thinking more about it. And I think the thing is, philosophy is life, right? Like this could be about life. It's so broad that I almost feel like we're hamstring ourselves if we try to restrict it too much. And, we can kind of, we got our first piece of fan mail earlier today. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's our boy Z. Thank you so much for reaching out and dropping us a note. Glad you enjoyed the first couple of episodes and want us to continue to question everything. I have no doubt, a lot of what we'll continue to talk about will be, touching on some of the topics that, that you hinted at. I don't know. We'll see. Related to, he was saying, hey, we should talk more politics and, don't be afraid of talking about religion and all of that. And, I don't think we'll be afraid of going there if we end up getting there. But I think there's so much more that, at least for me, that I find interesting that is about why we even, behave the way that we behave, like more fundamentally. And then the construct of one is religion. The construct of other are different ways and beliefs that we all, choose to exist and treat each other in the world. And we'll definitely be putting that at the heart of, continuing to peel back the onion on things like, religion and politics and all that. So anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
On that, man.
And thanks to Z for our first email. And I appreciate the suggestion. And I think, like you said, I don't think we're going to shy away from anything. If things come up organically, but I think what we originally discussed with the concept of this podcast was we don't want to. It's not like we're trying to court controversy, right? That's not kind of where our heads are at. Our heads are kind of to explore philosophy and explore what it means to be a good person, and that doesn't necessarily kind of jive with politics or controversy per se, but if it comes up organically, for sure, I don't think either of us are going to shy away from it.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties back to what I was saying before, is that it could really be about anything, right? It's so broad in terms of philosophy intersects with so many different things, culture and life and art and so many different things. So I don't think it's a good idea for us to really limit ourselves. So I'm open to talking about anything, but we did want to stick true to the original conception of the podcast, right? Of what we thought it should be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we don't have to label it a given theme, but giving concepts language and words is helpful for us to progress and advance a conversation. If there does emerge the need of, or like the need to create a niche that we talk about called techno philosophy, because it just makes the connections that we draw through our conversation a concept, great. Like, that's cool. That's
Sure.
fun to me. And I think that is a lot of what this podcast is going to be about, as we question everything. In order to try to get to answers or to progress a thought, you need to define concepts, right? And if we define a concept that is like this, that's great. Like, that was what was so much fun about even the text exchange that we had about it, where it's like, yeah, okay, I could see a concept where we, like, say, to your point, Shaq, like, one idea is we connect this concept, from ancient philosophy, and we see this pattern over there, and then we connect that with what's happening in AI, and we say, okay, great, that's exactly what techno philosophy is. It's helpful. It helps us to structure our thoughts a little bit more acutely, and then be able to advance more concepts, principles to get to truth.
Yeah, completely agree. Just as an aside, I noticed you just called me Shaq, and we should probably explain to our listeners what that's about. So
That
going
was
back
slick.
to, I think no, all good. So going back to college, I think we talked previously about how we met and all that kind of stuff at NYU. At NYU, actually going back even before that, in high school, I was a Shaquille O'Neal super fan. I followed him religiously, and I was an Orlando Magic fan and all of that, right? And so much so that in my dorm room I had a life-size cutout, a cardboard cutout of Shaquille O'Neal. So naturally, I was a pretty big guy in college, and so all of my friends started calling me Shaq, just for short. And it kind of, Chirag and Shaq kind of, is not too far off. So yeah, a lot of my closest friends still call me Shaq. So you might hear a Sune slip here and there, but all good.
Well, we'll save the dog story for later, bud.
Yes, definitely. That's another episode.
Oh man, yeah, well said. I know it's weird. We still, like, in text and stuff, like in our NYU chat, we'll call each other our college names. But yeah, it's funny how we've transitioned out of that.
Yeah,
All
growing
right,
up, right?
cool. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. So, all right, should we jump into Stolen Focus?
Yeah, let's jump into Stolen Focus. So, to start, it's the book is called Stolen Focus. It's by the author Johan Hari. It was released, I think, in the early 2010s, I believe. I don't have the exact year in front of me, but I think it had a pretty big impact right away. I remember hearing about it years ago when it first came out, and it was on my to read list forever. And I think last year was kind of a tipping point for me where I was like, I really need to read this book, because I knew that there was something. Well, I knew that it was all the distractions in my life that were causing me to live the way I was living and preventing me from kind of breaking through into living the life I wanted to live. So, something in me just said that, hey, you have to read this book. So that's when I read it. So, so now we're just discussing kind of the major themes of the book, and let's start with, I think, what the first part of the book covers, which is attention and focus, right? A lot of, and it kind of goes into the history of, even before social media and the internet, of, how people focused, and what attention was even like before, in a pre-internet age, right? There was a lot of boredom. There was a lot of time to contemplate thoughts. And I think he really gets into how we've kind of lost that, right? There's that dopamine hit you get from social media, from the endless scroll of certain sites and apps. And in any moment of boredom, we tend to reach for that, right? Because it's like a drug, right? You're addicted. You reach for it whenever you have a spare second that you're not doing anything, because that's just how your brain works.
Totally. I think boredom is such a lost concept. And even as a parent, I know we try to find ways in which we can introduce boredom to the kids, and it's almost impossible. It's so
It
tough.
is.
And
Yeah.
the social normalization of the phones being on the person all the time, and how fast it happened, and how addicted our kids are, is I don't know, just so fascinating, and it happens so quick, I don't even realize it. And then it's like, well, okay, you're trying to tell like a heroin addict, like, yeah, just stop taking the heroin. It's like
Right.
you can't get them to be bored now because they've normalized hyper attention dopamine hit, like you said, Shaq. Like
Yep.
it's crazy how we have to somehow get some of that boredom back and kind of, get the balance of delayed gratification
Yeah.
back into our kids. I'm not saying all, look, there's great kids out there and all that. Like speaking to the averages, right? Like, and I would be hard to find a parent that doesn't agree that their children are all struggling at some degree with focusing and attention and, being able to, literally do one thing for a prolonged period of time. Even kids that are whatever we would define as successful now are on a text, on a snap, doing something, watching a Twitter scroll. Like they're all multitasking. We don't even realize that they're doing it. And they think it's a good thing. They're proud of it that they can
Right.
multitask
Yeah.
this much, you know?
Yeah. And I think studies have shown that multitasking doesn't exist. What you're really doing is context switching constantly, right? And there's a cost to that. And I don't remember if this is from the book or if I've heard this elsewhere, but every time you switch from one thing to another, there's there's a cost in terms of your brain has to switch gears when it goes from doing one thing to another thing. And so what you're doing is it's taxing for your brain. You're making yourself more tired. You're not doing each thing efficiently if you're constantly switching back and forth. So I think it takes a real toll on our brains when we're doing that. So I agree with you. I don't think it's a good thing. And I think people who claim to be multitasking, who think it's a good thing, who take that as a point of pride, I don't agree with that. I don't think, and I think science will prove that out, that's not how your brain works, and that's how neuroscience works.
Yeah. No, I agree, right? I will concede, Shaq, that even when you like, I'm thinking of a surgeon here and how like they'll play their music and they'll have other, like, it's not a sterile, pristine, like super hyper focused, right? Like you hear plenty of stories of surgeons like with their rock music or whatever and like
Right.
pumping themselves up and then even some of them having it on through the surgery. And
Right.
it's like, well, is that good? Like, should we normalize that? Like, doesn't seem like that should be a good idea. So I feel like, just because we see examples in the real world of other extremes, we should question it. It's not okay. Like, we shouldn't normalize that a surgeon should have rock music blaring while they're in the middle of surgery.
Right.
I would prefer a surgeon that doesn't have any music on. That's just me. Like, I want
Right.
them focused on whatever they're doing to me and not like, getting ready to do air guitar in the middle of my surgery. Like that's just
Right.
me.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I'm sure the surgeon would argue that it somehow helps him focus, but
Right.
yeah, no, yeah,
Exactly.
but so
So yeah.
that's one of the biggest things I took away from the book, and something I've done, consciously since reading the book is try to take time just to do nothing, right? Not necessarily just to do nothing, but sit. I carve out at least a half an hour every morning to read a book or do some kind of reading, but then also just to sit. I'll try to take like 5 to 10 minutes just to sit and think about what I've just read or think about anything, right? Like something I've experienced in the past 24 hours. And again, I think that's how your brain processes and learns is, you have an experience and then you don't necessarily process it right away. It kind of stays in your short-term memory. A certain time later, your brain might go back to that and say, "Hey, what parts of this were important? What parts of this should I take into into my long-term memory?" And I think we lose a lot of that, right? But if we don't give our brains a chance to really think about that, and we could I'm sure go into a lot about mindfulness and meditation, and I think that can really help with that as well. But yeah, just taking time. Even if you take like a 5 minute breather, in during your workday, and give yourself 5 minutes where you're not doing anything. Give your brain time to breathe, right? For lack of a better term, and let it be for 5 minutes. I'm sure everyone and anyone can find that helpful.
I mean, if we go back to, like our basic principles of the way we see the world around us work, the way our bodies work when we exert ourselves physically, the way our brain feels when we mentally exert ourselves through a hard day of like concentration and focus and execution of the skills that we have. And you're like, oh man, yeah, like that was a day. Like you have to rest just like your muscles have to rest. The brain is an organ, your brain has to rest. And if we don't practice resting our brains and it's always on, yeah, it's not a leap to say it's not an efficient use of that resource of our organ, that the organ needs time to heal and get better. And that's, I think, what we're trying to say is if you're not able to quiet your brain, then it's going to, I think, get tired faster and wear out faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I was just, I don't commute anymore because I work from home 100%. But yesterday I was in the city for an event, and I was taking the subway, and I was just looking around, and it was striking. But just because I haven't commuted in a long time, I was looking around at people, what they were doing, and everyone was down on their phone, and everyone was in some sort of endless scroll app, right? Like it's either TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or some everyone. It seemed like everyone. I'm not sure it wasn't everyone, but a good chunk of everyone I was looking at was just on their phone. And yeah, it was really striking to the last time I regularly commuted was probably at least in the city in New York City was at least 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. So even in that time, with TikTok taking over, so many people on TikTok, I feel like it's accelerated even since even before that. Like I think it's been going on for many years, but I feel like maybe in the past few years it's even accelerated beyond that.
Yeah, the the mediums evolve, the channels, the hand through the phone and the apps that are exposing the content, they evolve. However, the concept remains the same. It is a currency of your attention. It's the currency of being
Right.
able to get access to your brain. And that's
Yeah.
I mean, as the book, gets into excruciating detail and transparency, like that is by design, right? I mean, everybody's seen the or the social network,
Yeah.
and same thing. Like that was an in-depth view of one particular organization. However, now you see that it's the whole industry. I mean, it's
Right.
that's really where we're at. And even though the forms change, the pattern remains the same. And if we aren't realizing it, acknowledging it, and then trying to find ways to fight it, then you're just complicit, right? Like we it's up to us to be vocal and say like that's not what we should be optimizing for if we want to have a happy, healthy society and country. That's greed. It's
Yeah.
blatant greed,
Right.
and that's where we got to chill on that stuff. We have to stop. We have to have some form of self-regulation that says, yeah, that's probably not good for our country. That's probably not good for society. So anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that goes into the second part. Like, so we talked about a big chunk of the beginning part of the book is attention and focus and boredom, and he really expounds on those topics. And then it leads into the next section, which is these giant tech companies, right? And like you said, what they're doing is optimizing for what they're optimizing for eyeballs, right? That their primary goal is to try to get you to look at their app for as long as humanly possible, right? And that equates to dollars, right? That equates to their profits. So if you're optimizing for that, they throw millions and millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars into this, using social psychology and what we talked about before with dopamine hits and this all these things that your brain craves, and it's socially engineering these apps to do that as efficiently and as as what's the word I'm looking for, like as
Optimized, man.
as
They're optimized, right?
viciously as possible.
Oh
Yeah, I mean
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
vicious, right? Though, I
Like
mean, if you think about
weaponized.
it, yeah, absolutely. That's a great term. Weaponize, weaponizing it to get you to look at their apps for as long as possible, and it's you're right. It's not good for society, I think, in the long term. And I think there has to be, And I'm hoping there's a tipping point where enough people see what's happening and say, you know what, we need to do something about this. And I think maybe that's happening already. There was that documentary on Netflix, the social.
Yeah,
I can't
social
remember the name
dilemmas,
of it.
right? Social
Social
dilemmas.
Dilemma. Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of the people that he interviews in the book in Stolen Focus are also featured in that documentary. So it's kind of in line with what we're talking about. But it's pretty harrowing when you hear about how much money they're throwing at it, and how much social engineering they're doing
Oh yeah.
to do this. And it's not,
Oh,
you could say adults have more agency, and we should be able to kind of overcome it. But I mean, when you're talking about kids start using these social media apps at these precocious ages where their brains are still developing. They don't stand a chance, man. I mean, what are they going to do, right? Like, all their friends are using these social media apps. They start using it. It's not something they can overcome. It's
all right, so
it's
let me ask you this then. So let me
yeah.
ask you this, because we're both admitted capitalists, at least for certain periods of our life. We
Hmm.
optimized for financial gains. And we look at, if we believe in capitalism and the free market, then shouldn't we have prevented this from happening? That there should have been a rival or some way to balance the abuse of our attention to the point, to the detriment and the negative health outcome of our country. Like, I guess that's the part that I'm struggling with capitalism now, to say, if we truly believe in the free market and we don't need any form of regulation and some form of boundaries or guardrails put into place. Yeah, I mean, to me,
Yeah, I mean,
that's hard to
I
kind of, I can't square it out.
yeah, no, I agree. And I think maybe at some point I was a pure capitalist, but I don't think I have been for a long time. Because I think pure capitalism doesn't work, right? Because the assumption there is that a company, a corporation, not assumption. Let me go back. So I think the idea behind pure capitalism is that there's a corporation. Its sole interest is the stock, the shareholder, right? Like,
Right, shareholders, yeah.
it's purely profit driven. And that's, we've been okay with that because we do put in regulations, right? There is SEC. There are certain regulations that the government puts into place to rein in these companies. But if you're talking about pure capitalism, that's their sole focus. There's nothing else, right? There's no ethics. There's no more morality. It's purely about the profit. I think that's the definition of capitalism, right? That's the definition of a corporation, is that their sole interest is in answering to the shareholder. So I don't think pure capitalism works, and I think I'd say most reasonable people would agree with that. I think capitalism as an economic system works for the most part, but it does need to be reined in, right? You do need regulation, and I think my personal perspective is that I'm okay with capitalism as there are elements of capitalism that work, right? The competition, driving down prices, all that kind of stuff. I think that does work. But without regulation, you end up with kind of rampant capitalism where people start abusing the system and start being greedy, and that doesn't work. And I think you need regulations, and you also need a social safety net, because capitalism as a social construct also doesn't work, because it doesn't care about people who fall through the cracks, right? I think we're talking about it as if we have any control over this, but I think capitalism works, and then you have to have a social safety net, and you have to have regulations to rein in the greedy elements or the greedy actors in that kind of framework.
All right. So here's my crazy idea, right?
Mhm.
Maybe we call it a bridge from true pure capitalists and socialists. Maybe that's not fair, but you know where I'm going, where there's
Yeah.
like extreme regulation. I think the bridge is what, at least for me, one of the cool things that I love talking about in this podcast, and I think what you and I wanted to spend a lot more time and are spending going to spend time talking about, is the other way in which you can put a check on capitalism. And to me, that's morality and it's ethics. And if we have a conversation about morality and ethics and what's right and what's fair and what's equitable, then I think we tear down a bit of, hopefully, the walls that we see built in front of us right now in our society. So I feel like if we say, okay, instead of us arguing about whether there should be more regulation, less regulation, do we need a government, do we not need a government, should we fix government, should we blow it all up? To me, the conversation is about, well, let's just first get back to basics of what's good and what's bad. And I think that's a lot of what ethics and morality focused on, was what is good and what is bad. If you look at religion, what did religion focus on? It was a bunch of lessons in trying to better define what's good and what's bad. And I think even the conversations now that we're having, that those lines are very blurred on what's good and bad. And they're hard conversations because the constructs of society and civilization now are more complicated than they ever were, and they're going to be more complicated than they ever have been as we move forward. So yeah, we need to sort of get back to basics and make sure we have a strong foundation of what's good and what's bad. So anyway, I think that's why this was cool, and I'm looking forward to continuing this dialogue and this conversation and expanding it to more people, because I think the more we can talk about and discuss what we believe is good and what we believe is bad, we're going to go back to some very fundamental principles that I think we've forgotten about.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think that is a good place to start. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, there's so much there, right? But yeah, I think I need to process that a little bit. But yeah, I agree. I think we do need to talk about the fundamentals, and it kind of ties into the next section of the book that we wanted to talk about, which is, to recap, we talked about attention, focus, boredom, and then going into social media and how they're optimizing for eyeballs and for dollars. And then a lot of the book talks about kind of death of an expert and truth and what the nature of truth, right? And I think it gets tricky there, because what you're saying is we should all agree on what's good and what's bad, but how do we do that, right? And how do we do that in an age of disinformation, where there are sometimes not controls put into place at these social media companies or these tech companies, where we can all agree on what the truth is, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, don't we have two truths in society right now? We're not going to go too deep there, but it's pretty objective to say you have folks that consume news from MSNBC and you have folks that consume news from Fox News. I think those are already pretty accepted in society as where the points of view of those groups are shared most, related to most. And we draw ourselves and get sucked into those, further feeding the divide, right? Like,
yeah,
we have to be honest about that and be apolitical about that. We're all guilty of it. And that's where we have to start, by questioning what are we receiving in terms of information, so that we are getting back to, like, well, okay, forget all that. I can't trust anybody. So let's just go back to what is good and what's bad. And then, yeah, like you said, it is a hard conversation. It's going to require a lot of work, but that's the work we got to do. Like, we have to,
yeah.
we have to spend the time and get back to defining that.
Yeah, and I argue it's even worse than what you describe, right? It's not even just people who follow MSNBC and for people who follow Fox News. We've created these bubbles that we exist in, and like you said, we're all guilty of it, right? Where you follow certain people on social media, you only talk to certain people, and we fall into these bubbles where we just hear the same thing over and over again, and everyone you talk to is someone you agree with, and you don't seek out opposing points of view. And I think it's so hard, because I try to do that, right? I'm sure you do too. A lot of people, I'm sure, try to do that. But then you also have people in the media who are not acting in good faith, right? Like, I would argue people like, trolls like Alex Jones, and, even people like Tucker Carlson, and even on the left, like there are people on the left who don't act in good faith. And they just muddy it up so much, because how do you even have a debate with someone like that? Because they're not coming coming at you from a place of believing what they're saying necessarily, but just it's this side versus that side. I'm just going to do whatever I can to make sure my side wins. It's not about coming to the truth. You've already decided what you think is the truth, and you're going to do everything you can, use whatever debating tactics, and say whatever you can to make sure your side wins. So
Yeah.
at that point, you're not trying to get at the truth. You're just trying to make sure your side wins. And I don't know how we come out of that. Like, that's one of the things I struggle with the most.
Yeah, yeah. I think the way you come out of it is through re-embracing and being curious, through questioning everything. And if you're not willing to start questioning, taking a step back and questioning, hey, what's going on? What am I really doing here? Yeah, I think you're going to continue to just follow the herd. And
Yeah.
if we bring the conversation back to, hey, if I fall down and you see me fall down, are you going to stop and ask me, hey, are you all right? Yeah, that's what we should be talking about. Oh, yeah, I would do the
Right.
same thing. Well, okay. So why are we worried about this stupid little topic over here when, like, If I need something, you'll help me out. Yeah, I mean, talk to your freaking neighbors. Like
Yeah.
go have a house party, go have a dinner party, and get to know your neighbors. And yeah, oh well, they're this supporter, that supporter, whatever. Just talk to them.
Yeah.
I promise you that if you ask them some very simple questions, you will break down guards and you will just get to know them, and you'll realize that yeah, there is something interesting there. Ask them what was the last fun thing that they did. What fun thing do they have planned? Guess what? It doesn't matter what your political ideology is. You're human. And that's what I think we've forgotten. And you can move past that, I think it's one of those areas, Chirag, that the more you talk about that, I don't think it helps. I think we're at a point now where we got to start talking about where we have more similarities and, how we can work together to solve bigger problems in this stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's some great advice. And, I think it goes back to the Socratic method, right? Where it's just about asking questions and, and extending that even more to what you said, being curious and being open about to people and being open to other people's experiences. And I think that can only help. You're right.
I
I think
mean,
that's a great approach to take.
I'm telling you, man, like, I talk to friends with different political ideologies and political leanings, and it's like it's very fun to look at it like truly objectively and to be honest with yourself if you really are being objective. And so the only way to really do that is to talk to a diverse set of people and a diverse set of opinions. Only then can I think you establish what your truth is, right? Like what do you really believe? And what do you think is the best way for us to treat each other as people that are coexisting on a city, a town, a neighborhood, a block, whatever? Because that's what really matters at the end of the day. And I think the other part, at least when we get into some of these discussions, it gets heavy, it gets like negative, and we're
Hmm.
in tense situations. There's no question we're in tense situations, but it's like sometimes you just have to look at where we are relative to the rest of the world. And if you think it's bad here, it's just if you've traveled around the world, it is still amazing here
Right.
compared to many, many, like
Absolutely.
majority of the world. So, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe anywhere in the world. I don't know where else where else you could have the comforts that we have, here.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think it was either Steven Pinker or I forget who. And you're going to find this a lot where I try to make references and I can't remember who I'm trying to make a reference to. But we
ChatGPT.
live we live in the greatest time in the history of the world, right? Like it's never been better to be a human being than it is right now, and especially being in the United States right now. Because if you think back to history, like it was a shitty way to live pretty much at any other time in history, right? So I think it's always good to take that perspective, to take a step back and really look at our lives and look at the whole course of history and say, hey, you know what, we have it pretty good. Like
Oh my
maybe
God,
we
yeah.
shouldn't argue about these things.
I mean, listen, we've seen and we studied through our history books what war in a civil war looks like. And people talk about it all with all bravado and all we're heading there and think of it as a foregone conclusion. Like, no, it's not. In fact, what would be the whole point of it anyway? We saw what happened the last time everybody talked about well, civil war and let's, go and kill each other and, well, my
Yeah.
side is right. Well, okay, great. Are you really going to solve anything through that activity? Let's say you kill everybody, then what? You win, now what? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we're gonna have to figure this out. Okay, figure what out? How we're gonna all coexist. Okay, but now there isn't as many people for us to figure that out for. Is that easier, worse? Like,
Yeah.
what you don't even know what you're fighting for. You really don't. You really don't know what you're fighting for. And so, to me, the solution is pretend the war is over and you've won. What are you going to do now? And what are those things that you really want to solve for? And then have those discussions and we can solve those without having to kill two people. Like figure out what your ideology is because I think you're focusing on things that are too narrow and not broad enough.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I think that kind of gets me to think, yeah, I think it is important to develop your own ideology. I think a lot of people don't do that, right? I think it's because of our tribal past. We tend to fall into these tribes, right? Where we like the cover of the tribe, where we believe, we're with people that believe the same things we believe, and we find safety in that. There's safety in numbers, right? And so we tend to fall into those same patterns, and we don't seek out, like I said before, we don't seek out other perspectives. And I think it's probably a defense mechanism that we have that's innate. But I think we've evolved past that, or at least we should try to evolve past that, right? Where we we should seek this out. It can only be good for society if we seek it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it had to have been, part of our DNA for how we survive. I mean, you'd survive in larger numbers, and that is certainly very tribal and innate to our decision mechanisms in our own brains. And I mean, yeah, I mean, it tying it back to the social network, kind of explosion, and how much the social media companies have abused that innate sort of instinct of our desire to be part of a group, and to have an identity that has a collective that have like ideas, without really taking a minute and thinking about, well, what are my beliefs? Like, instead of you thinking, well, like, what does everybody else in this group say I should think, it's like, no, let's take a step back and rethink what's important to me, and what really matters to me, and try it. We started, and when you and I were chatting, and maybe we were, you mentioned it here, like how you take time for yourself to read and do meditation. And I think, when we do those things and are bored for a little while, we just calm down and relax a little bit, and ask ourselves what is important to us and what matters to me. And you'll start realizing again that you just don't need to be this amped up. We don't need to be this angry. We can calm down and talk to our neighbors and have dinner together and be okay, because there's way more good and way more similarities than and we're forgetting that. And I don't know, maybe I'm repeating myself. We can
Yeah, no, all
but
good.
the
Yeah, I
this is
think
what
I
I've
think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it all does go back to kind of quieting the mind, right? And I think because we're all so our attention is so fractured in so many different directions, we're constant, like our brains are constantly moving. And I think if you don't find that time to quiet the mind, then you're in trouble. I mean, I think everyone has to make an effort to do that. I mean, I would strongly urge everyone to, find 5 minutes, find 10 minutes, find any time you can to quiet the mind. Even if it's not meditating, just sit somewhere. I mean, just sitting and sitting somewhere quiet and not doing anything, that is meditation. It doesn't have to be any kind of, big mystical thing. It doesn't have to be structured. It can just be you sitting somewhere quietly for 5 minutes. Like that is meditation. That's giving your brain time to breathe. And I think it's critically important for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more, man. I think
Yeah.
we talk about mental health, brain health. It's important. It's and I feel like it's atrophying, and we need to take it seriously and take it back, right? I mean, I love that. I mean, bringing it back to the title of the book, right? Stolen focus. Like, take it back. Like, yes,
Yeah.
John Hari is right. It was stolen from us, and it's time to take action and take it back. It's up to us, right? Like, it's every one of us. We have the power to take it back, to have conversations like we're hoping to have on this podcast, expand it, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends about it, and join the fight. I mean, I don't know. This is, for me personally, whatever happens with this podcast feels like I'm doing something. It feels like I'm sharing my
Yeah.
voice, I'm sharing my ideas and sharing my thoughts. And hopefully we'll find like-minded people and continue the conversation. But for me, that's the best part of this, is getting to talk to you and hopefully share ideas that others will relate to, and just relax everybody. This is helping relax me. I hope we help to relax others.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, at a minimum, I think it's a form of forced therapy for each of us. But if we
Yeah.
can spread that to other people, I think it's a great mission to have, and we're happy to have these discussions, I think, and hopefully we can, like you said, find like-minded people to listen. And yeah, I think that's a great place to end it. I think, we kind of came full circle. And, I just want to remind the listeners that, if you have topics that you want to talk about, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always open for discussion. I'm sure you've already realized we're open to talking about anything. And we do want to in the future have, guests on to bring in other perspectives and have some great debates.
Yeah, so hit us up, join the conversation. We got to start putting, and I'll hold myself accountable. I got to start putting either some clips or some posts on our social media so we can start getting more people involved in the conversation and progress it further. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, follow us on all the socials. We'll get it out onto our website. It's questioneverythingexcept.substack.com, and we'll get links out there to all of our socials. And I don't know, what do the kids say? Smash that like and subscribe button.
Oh man, dude, you just dated us so bad. This is the stuff that the kids like cringe at when I say in the house. It's so funny.
Man, all right. I guess it's not what the kids are saying. All right, we'll have to figure out what the kids are saying these days.
We're trying. All right, man.
All right, that's it.
That's the pod.
All right, that's the pod. Great discussion as always. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to join the conversation, email us at questioneverythingexcept@gmail.com. See you next time.